Can we stop the music for a minute? Can we just, thank you. Ms. Rana, has Dr. Prachikal joined us? Reshma ji, you can hear me?
Ma'am, can I interrupt you?
Ma'am,
Ma'am, Prachikal ma'am had joined by Reshma Rana's name. So
okay.
She's there. She's very much there. Yes. Yeah.
A very warm welcome to all the dignitaries present here. I, Anushri Mohanty,
and I, Seemit Chaudhary,
would like to extend a hearty welcome to one and all present here for the Shastri Indo-Canadian Virtual Lecture Series.
The Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute is a unique foundation providing a financial support system in terms of different fellowships by both the Indian and the Canadian governments. It provides the very prestigious Shastri Conference and Lecture Series grant, which provides a very strong support system and an international platform for speakers all over the world and across domains to engage with students in the most constructive manner. This year, Symbiosis Center for Management Studies, Pune, has been honored with this prestigious grant. And thus, we are elated to host this 2-day virtual lecture series.
We would now like to call upon our beloved Director of Symbiosis Center for Management Studies, Pune, Dr. Adya Sharma ma'am, to kindly address the gathering.
Thank you, Beta. Namaste, and a very warm welcome to Symbiosis Center for Management Studies, or SCMS, Pune, and Shastri Indo Canadian Institute lecture series. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Kaul, Director of Shastri Indo Canadian Institute, and a very warm welcome to Mr. Ashok Nambudri, who is also here, who's a very dear friend and a well-wisher. Namaskar, Ashokji. Who's a very dear friend and a great well-wisher of SCMS Pune. A very warm welcome to other guests, dignitaries, faculty, staff, and of course, an extra special welcome to my dear students. Dr. Kaul and Mr. Ashok, please give me 2 minutes to introduce Symbiosis and SCMS Pune to you, though Mr. Ashok knows as well, but still. Symbiosis was established in the year 1971 by our beloved founder and president, Dr. S.P. Majumdar, on the motto Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Today, it's a destination of more than 45,000 students from across the world. I speak with great pride when I tell you that we had our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi with us just the last Sunday to celebrate the Golden Jubilee celebrations of Symbiosis. SCMS Pune, or Symbiosis Center for Management Studies, is one of the leading BBA institute of the country. Here, academic has a very strong multidisciplinary flavor. And it's not just academics, but it's beyond academics that we offer. We try to inculcate sensitivity in our students towards community and environment when they work with NGOs. In fact, our institute has been awarded the Guinness Book of Record for participating in creating awareness about menstrual hygiene among the largest number of adolescents. Semester exchange has been an integral part of SCMS Pune for long, but in the last 2-3 years, we also introduced new innovative pedagogy called Collaborative Online International Learning, or COIL as it is popularly called. Our students start their own startups while still in the institute. They have one of the largest student festivals. In short, our students face obstacles, they face barriers, they find solutions, they are introduced to reality of life right when they are here, so that when they step out, they are groomed to be thought-provoking leaders. Talking about the theme for the lecture series that we have taken, I think it is heavily dominated by our lives of the past 2 years. When all of us at an individual level or at an organizational level have faced internal, external challenges, and yet we have overcome them. We have collaborated with people across the world and found solutions. And even as we struggle today to define old normal, new normal, or some new normal, we are finding solutions. And with that background, the theme taken for this lecture series was Sustainable Strategies Dealing with Uncertainty. Dr. Kaul, I'm really grateful to the Shastri Indo Canadian Institute for giving us this grant. In the next 2 days, we have experts from different sectors talking about this theme and sharing their knowledge with us. I'm sure the next 2 days are going to be full of a lot of knowledge and learning for us. And we look forward to a long-term relationship. Mr. Ashok, I cannot thank you enough. Your support and your guidance at every step has really helped us a lot, and we are grateful for that. I'm also grateful to my colleagues, Ashutoshji, Shreya, Sonika, all the student team, Aditi, Angelo, YT team, everyone. Thank you so much for pulling this all together. Welcome to SCMS Pune Shastri Indo Canadian lecture series. Namaste.
Thank you so much for your kind words, ma'am.
We would now like to introduce Dr. Prachi Kaul ma'am, the Honorable Director of Shastri Indo Canadian Institute. She has been associated with the Institute for more than 17 years now. An alumna of Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, Dr. Kaul has served and is associated with various national and international bodies such as World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UNESCO, Plan International and National University of Educational Planning and Administration before joining the Shastri Institute. She is a social scientist with a keen interest in studying aspirations and social mobility of the masses and its relation to higher education. Ma'am serves on various advisory boards of academic and research programs and is also a member of binational joint working groups of governments of India and Canada, that is, in the field of science and technology and higher education. Thank you for joining us today, ma'am. I would request you to kindly share a few words with us. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I believe you're on mute.
That's the most used sentence, I guess, in these times. Please mute yourself and unmute yourself. Thank you so much for having me here with all of you. I see wonderful participation, Adyaji. Congratulations for putting this together, and congratulations for submitting a worthy proposal, and it is a privilege of Shastri Institute to be associated with your center and giving you this grant, because I see it's not just a benefit gone to you, but to Shastri Institute as well. When we see the things evolving so beautifully, when we see things or the any issue of relevance being discussed and deliberated and penetrated, especially in the young minds like these students, I think it's very worth investment in financial terms to carry forward the work that you have incepted, the idea you have incepted. Congratulations once again, and thank you very much for having me here today for this inaugural session of the event that you are holding for 2 days. Sustainable development, is very close to Shastri Institute's working and actions. Starting from the time when United Nations introduced the concept and the idea of MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, we started working and focusing in these areas. And everyone knows that anything and everything that we do somehow connects to these MDGs or SDGs. So our priorities always remain connected to this particular idea, whether it was MDG and later on being reintroduced as a Sustainable Development Goal, that is SDGs. And any and every aspect of SDGs have been kind of touched upon by Shastri Institute, either directly or indirectly. When I say directly, for last almost 6 to 7 years before this pandemic has arrived, we used to have a mega event every year in the summers, and it used to be a binational in approach. And we used to adopt a theme, and we used to bring in scholars of eminence from both the ends, as well as the younger lot of researchers to participate and learn from them. So till pandemic arrived, this was a kind of an annual feature for our programming. And along with that, if you look into the list of grants and awards that we offer to our member institutions and our students and our faculty, you'll find sustainable development goals, the research concerning to that, appearing so frequently on the list. So we are very closely knitted to this idea, and anybody who takes over this idea becomes our partner in sustaining thought and sustaining the issues around. So congratulations once again, Adyaji, for organizing this. I'm sure this is going to help our students and the younger lot of researchers who need this enrichment in terms of developing their perspectives, developing their thoughts, and taking it forward with the help of their teachers. Coming down to my institute, it's a big gathering here, and I see this as a possible opportunity to let them know what Shastri does. As dear friends, Ms. Mohanty and Chaudhary have already, informed all of you that we are a binational organization and we work on the corridors between India and Canada. And our mandate is to build cultural and educational linkages between the two countries. The way we operate is can be understood in two ways. One is providing our member institutions financial assistance to have events like this. Not just like this, but Anushri and Shimant can take over an opportunity to go to Canada for an internship program. They can be there for 3 months and come back enriched. Similarly, students like them from Canada can come down to your campus and be here for 3 months. And this is all funded by Shastri Institute and MyTax, that is an agency funded by Ministry of Innovation and Development, Government of Canada. So that is one opportunity for the younger, I would say, beginners in the sister and fraternity at the university and colleges level. Goes further is master's level program and doctoral level program and postdoctoral programs, wherein similarly scholars can be in India and Canada both ways. And enrich themselves, do a semester here or there, or do a short research project with in affiliation with the faculty, and go back to their home country and rejoin their studies. So these are the opportunities for the students for sure. Along with that, anything proposed by any faculty, we emphasize that if there's a participation of young researchers and students, we give a lot of weightage to those projects. So we strongly believe the building of capacity of young generation researchers and students. So our focus, if we get 1 rupee from Government of India, 70 paisa is spent on a student and 30 paisa goes to faculty. So we are committed towards building the next generation of researchers, which is needed for not just for India, for the global society as well. Coming down to faculty, we have various initiatives, faculty mobility program, wherein faculty can go to Canada and their colleagues can come down to their campuses. They can co-teach a course, they can offer series of seminars and workshops and lectures, and they can do research projects together. Similarly, we provide funding for professors to form a team of binational nature. 2 institutions from India and Canada come together and offer a collaborative research to Shastri Institute. So there are enormous opportunity, the kind of plethora of activities we offer, opportunities we offer. I don't think we leave behind anything that is relevant for the academia and research fraternity in India and Canada for that matter. So what I would like to say that this is one way of our operation by which we assist you financially and make you do things that you are interested in. The second way is very, very interesting, is to provide you a network of institution. And I guess we are focusing on our need to globalize our campuses very well. And with new education policy, in place, it is imperative that we go beyond our borders. And Symbiosis is a very well established institution, and they already have a lot of connections abroad. But if it is concerning to Canada, I think we are providing you best of best institutions to collaborate with. And if you're stuck anywhere, we are here to handhold and take you further to explore the opportunity of collaboration. So this is an opportunity that Shastri Institute provides to our member institutions, which are 170 in number now. It's ever growing. And we believe that this network is of immense importance to people who are willing to come together, join hands, and do things that are of their mutual interest. I also like to take this opportunity to announce that we are going to go to adapt cluster approach in our programming. And there are a couple of areas that we have identified to begin with, like agriculture, artificial intelligence and robotics, sustainable development goal, also One Health, that is very, very important nowadays. So these are the areas, and to begin with, we have started to work around agriculture, and the launch of the first, this cluster, bilateral agriculture cluster, is scheduled for 15th of March. If you're interested, please connect with my colleague, Ms. Reshma Rana. She would be able to provide you more details about the event. It is scheduled for 8 p.m. On 15th of March. So do join if you are interested and engage with the fraternity who is going to take this initiative forward. I am not going to take any more time. It is important that you carry on with your activities which are more value addition than my being here and spending more time talking. Congratulations once again. Take care of yourself and have lovely time together and fulfilling time together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for insightful words, ma'am.
With this, we announce that the program is inaugurated. We shall now begin with the first schedule of the Shastri Indo-Canadian virtual lecture series.
The shift from offline to online has been a real challenge faced by everybody. While today we may feel that we have coped with that change, yet the uncertainty brought with the pandemic hasn't faded. To shed some more light on the same, we have with us today our first speaker of the morning, Mr. Ashok Nambudri, Chief Business Officer, International Business at Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited based in Dubai. He's the Chief Executive Officer and business leader with in-depth understanding of leading and managing businesses in the Indian environment and has a proven track record of consistent results across sectors. He's a certified filmmaker, prolific writer, and an occasional painter, and is passionate about training and mentoring young people. He also dabbles in amateur magic. He has over 20 years of working experience with companies like Hindustan Unilever, Coca-Cola, Tata Global Beverages, and Britannia. Today, he will be speaking on the topic, Strategic Shift of Marketing to the Digital Paradigm. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, Simit, and hello, Anushri. I hope you can hear me and see me clearly. I'll just project my slides and then begin.
Mr. Ashok, you wanted some assistance from IT?
Yes, I'm unable to project it. Perhaps if you can project it from there, then we can do it from
Fine. Vanshika, can you go ahead? Suprabal and all. I've already given the copy of presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure, as usual, Dr. Adya Sharma, to be part of this forum and to be part of the Symbiosis Center for Management Studies. Thank you so much for having me here, and I really feel part of the family. Dr. Prachi Kaul from the Shastri Institute, good morning and welcome. It was great to hear about what the Shastri Institute is doing to foster, not just the Millennium Goals or the Sustainable Development Goals, but also in terms of really fostering what you can do for students across. Dr. Mathur, Dr. Virani, great to have you here, and thank you so much for including me in this session. All right, so today we're going to talk about something which is very, very relevant. It's not just relevant for the current, it's going to be something that's going to be very relevant for the future as well. And if you could move to the next slide, we are really talking about the strategic shift of marketing to the digital paradigm. Sorry, you'll have to transition the slide because I don't have the controls.
Vanshi.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So like I was saying, this is something which is relevant not just to today, but immensely to the future. Why do I say that? Dr. Adya Sharma mentioned in her opening remarks that, terms like the new normal or the reverting back to the normal, etc., are new buzzwords in the management paradigm. While the pandemic has been unprecedented, while it has brought about seismic shifts as far as the business environment is concerned, I think what we are really beginning to see when it comes to the digital paradigm is just the beginning. It's just the tip of the iceberg that we have scratched. I think in the years to come and in the decades to come, the kind of seismic shifts that we are going to see in terms of the way marketers in general are going to be approaching consumers and the way businesses are going to think about marketing function, that's going to undergo a tectonic shift. And therefore, this is something which is exciting, which is a little scary, but it's something that we can't avoid and something that we need to be really on top of, especially all of you students, my friends who are listening into this lecture. Next slide, please. So let me begin with this question. I'm not sure whether we can interact with the students, but what's common about the chief marketing officers in these major global brands? In 2019, magazines like the Forbes magazine as well as CNBC News put out this article, which was very, very scary. It basically concerned these organizations, whether it is McDonald's, whether it is Uber, whether it is Johnson & Johnson. This question came up as to what is the commonality. If you go to the next slide, what really happened in 2019 is that all these organizations, which I showed you on the previous slide, they removed not the individual, but they removed the position of the chief marketing officer. And why did they do that? If you go to the next slide, look at this. This is basically from Forbes, where an article said that the tenure of the CMO is coming to an end and there is a need to hunt for the new unicorn CMO. Move to the next slide. We'll keep moving fast. I'll stop where it's required. So what a survey by the agency Spencer Stuart said is that the CMO role is the most volatile CXO role in the boardroom and the most difficult to succeed in. Next slide. If you look at this chart, and it's a busy chart, so just look at the graphs, the blue bars. If you really look at it, what it tells you is that nearly 80% of the CMOs have spent less than 5 years on the job, with almost 1/5 of the CMOs lasting only 1 year. Why is this happening? Let's go to the next slide. So here's the reason. It's not because the CMOs are not delivering on what they're supposed to do. It's not a performance issue. It's not a relevance issue. It's not a business issue. It's a paradigm change in what is expected of the chief marketing officer and therefore of the marketing function. First, some facts. Customers today have a portfolio of experiences. Thanks to what's happening all around us, thanks to what's got accelerated by the pandemic, the customers are not just seeing, but they are feeling and experiencing anything and everything that the brand has to offer. Content and therefore communication is becoming a much bigger predicator of success in the marketing function. And data, that's the new animal on the table, and which is basically the power of data needs to be harnessed, needs to be leveraged. And finally, in the digital world, it is about moments. The consumer, she's experiencing moments and you have to win every single moment. And therefore, what's required for success in the marketing function going forward is going to be somebody who's comfortable with content, but equally comfortable with data. The ability to combine both the ability to analyze the data and to come up with the perfect modeling of what needs to be done from a brand solution perspective, and then to look at content to feed that, is really the harbinger of success when it comes to digital marketing. And what people and organizations are beginning to realize is that this is no more the role of one role. It is actually many roles combined into one, and therefore one CMO it's going to be difficult to really address some of these gamut of issues. The second is that the nature of the beast now is such that you need multifarious skills, and therefore the traditional way to look at consumers and to look at communication has completely changed. A question remains, what have these organizations done after removing the CMO role? Interestingly, they've actually broken that role up into multiple roles, and therefore it's no more one CMO heading the marketing function. There are 3 or 4 people who are now being deputed to manage that function, because it's a new field. It's something that needs a completely different approach, needs a different outlook towards how you're going to manage those moments for the consumer. And that's the paradigm change that's happening all around us. Next slide. Before I jump into what's changing and what is going to happen in the future, a few slides on what is digital marketing. And these are some very easy to understand slides, so we can go through fast. Let's go to the next slide. Digital marketing, also called online marketing, refers to all the marketing efforts that occur on the internet. Businesses leverage digital channels such as search engines, social media, email, websites, blogs to attract and connect with current and prospective customers. This includes also communication through text, multimedia messages. And so the digital marketing wheel that you see has got everything. It's not something that we are not familiar with. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Look at some data. This is a little dated because this is actually 2 years ago, but still relevant. Every single day, we have 269 billion emails that are sent and received. What a staggering number. Move on. Next slide. Over 40% of website visitors are now browsing through mobile. If you talk to any web developer or any app developer today, no more is it being developed for the large screen. Everything is being optimized for the small screen, and that's the way the world is going. Next slide. 6 out of 10 people would rather watch an online video than live television. I come from the media and broadcast industry, and I can tell you that the Western world today is experiencing something called cord cutting, where the younger generation, especially Gen X and Gen Y, are no more investing in a linear television. The future is really about small screens, customized personalization is what is happening. And therefore, this is something that will catch up faster in the developing economies than what we think. Next slide. Look at this data. Whether it is Gen X, Gen Y, whether it is baby boomers, whether it is millennials, across all categories, the number of people who are using social media, who are using the internet, who are on mobile screens is upwards of 48%. And therefore, it's not something that's only applicable to the younger generation. It is across the board. Next slide. In order to understand what's happening and in order to predict what will happen in terms of the digital paradigm, it's important to go back in history and look at what the adoption of technology, various kinds of technology, has taught us. Let's look at the next slide, where we are going to be basically looking at these technologies: television, print, radio, web, telephone, web 2.0, and cinema. What if I asked you to rank these technologies in order of how long they took to be adopted, not by 1 million users, not by 10 million users, but by 1 billion users globally? What do you think would be the number? And this, when I looked at this data, I was doing some research for this. I fell off the chair when I looked at the data. Let's go to the next slide and let me take you through some of these stats. Look at print first. Print was introduced, one of the earliest. It took 467, almost 500 years to reach 1 billion readers. On the right side, you have Alexander Graham Bell's invention in 1876, the telephone. It took 114 years, a century, to reach 1 billion users. Let's go to the next slide. Cinema, something that we all love. 1895, the Lumiere brothers actually came up with their first film on the moving train, and this took 81 years. The radio, which Marconi patented, this took 53 years, about half a century, to reach 1 billion users. Next slide. The television, as we know it, again took about 48 years. The web, which was introduced in 1992, it took 13 years, about a decade plus, to reach 1 billion users. And then Web 2.0, which came up later, it took just 4 years to reach that. So if you go to the next slide, which has basically got the whole thing what I just presented in a graphical format, the number of years to adopt new technology across the board, it's not about young users, it's not about male, female, it's not about developing countries or undeveloped countries, it's across the board. 1 billion, which means about 20% of the world's population. In order to penetrate that with a new technology, the time taken has come down from 500 years to as less as 4 years. And if you look at the last column there, God alone knows where we are going, because, what if, a new technology comes in, and we are talking about technologies that are significant, not small advances. These are big developments. What if it reaches a stage where in a matter of a few months, you are able to reach 1 billion people, and that kind of adoption happens? Imagine the scale at which some of these changes are happening, and which is why in my opening remarks, I said that this is actually a tectonic change and something that we need to be really on top of, because the chances of getting outdated are very, very high. At this point of time, I'm going to take a pause, and for the students especially who are listening to this lecture, I use this example to say that during my father's generation, for most of us, a career, when you pass out of your institute or your college and you're looking at a career used to be like a tunnel, where you enter the tunnel and then you come out after 30, 35 years. And you stay within the tunnel, you go on the track, you leverage whatever you've studied, you leverage your experiences and gain by it and build your career. In the current generation, the career choices are really moving from a tunnel into a series of tunnels, series of short tunnels, because the world is changing, technology is changing, options are changing, business environments are changing. And therefore you enter a tunnel, come out of it after a few years, enter the next tunnel, come out of it after the next years, etc. But going forward, over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, careers are going to become like a maze. You are not really going to be entering or exiting a tunnel. You're going to be really going around in mazes, because you've got to figure out what's happening and what the changes mean, and therefore how quickly you can adapt to it. And therefore why am I saying this? The index of success is no more about what you have learned 5, 10, 20 years ago, no more about what you have adapted to 5, 10, 20 years ago. It's really about how well you are being able to keep abreast of what's happening around you, and therefore how you are able to leverage that knowledge. Now, this is also an opportunity, because if you're able to adopt new technologies faster, if you're able to be ahead of the curve, then whether you build a career, whether you become an entrepreneur, the chances of doing something new and really tasting success are that much more higher than what it used to be 30, 40, 50 years ago. So it's both a challenge as well as an opportunity. For every coin has two sides, as they say, and it's virtually that. But to me, I think this chart really sums up the kind of huge shift that is going to happen. Next slide. So what are the implications of this dramatic digital shift? One, this point, number point one, really doesn't change, because you've got to be led by the consumer insights and behavior and not the technology. Even in the old world, even in terms of traditional marketing, it always started with the consumer. When I had gone to business school, this was the first thing that was taught to us, that don't get swayed by data, don't get swayed by technology, don't get swayed by creatives. Always start with the consumer. Because if you don't start with the consumer, you tend to go wrong. So that hasn't changed. The advent of technology, especially in the digital space, makes us think that in order to market digital marketing, you need to understand technology. No, that's not correct. You need to appreciate the technology, but you need to understand and start from the consumer. Two, in a rapidly changing world, organizations cannot own everything. No more is the concept of owning every single asset relevant. Instead, what's going to change a lot is going to be partnerships. You're going to see a lot of unlikely organizations, unlikely brands coming together in the interest of taking the journey forward, and therefore partnerships are going to be more important than ownerships. The third one, to my mind, is the most interesting. We are all familiar with startups. India has been host to so many unicorns in the last few years. But I think what's going to be relevant for organizations as well as brands and as well as for individuals like us is going to be in a perpetual beta environment where you're constantly learning, adapting, and growing. And that's not going away. Data, of course, is the new oil. There is no debating that. And then adopting a consistent and integrated approach to this whole thing is very, very critical. These are simple points when you read it on a slide, but as you reflect on it, and I'm not going into the depth of each of these, but I would really encourage that, spend some time on each of these points, because this is really the crux of what it takes to win in the digital paradigm. Next slide. Traditional media, we all know what it meant. It was basically about, marketeers use a slang called spray and pray, which is basically that you spread your communication far and wide, you spread your net far and wide, and pray that some of your relevant customers get attracted to your brand, get attracted to your campaign, and then come into the fold. Obviously, that's ineffective. That's unproductive from a returns perspective, because you've got to spend far more to reach a wider set of consumers, but you don't know if that's relevant to your brand or your target audience. On the digital space, however, the focus is really on the customer experience journey. You're basically targeting the customer where he or she is and really getting meshed into what they're doing, and therefore the chances of being able to get into their lives and attract them is that much more higher. How is this working? Next slide. The approach here, is really about 4 steps, which is about reaching them, action, conversion, and engagement. The last point, which is engagement, is especially important from a digital perspective, because the traditional way of doing marketing doesn't allow you to really engage with customers the way digital does. And this is going to be something that's going to explode in the near future. Next slide. In terms of marketing outcomes, and those of you who are looking at marketing, who are majoring in marketing, who are interested will understand this slide very well. There is this total addressable market, or which is the universe, where traditional marketing would say, let's go and spray it across all the total addressable market. But there is always one section where you don't have the right to win. It's not going to be something that's going to be attractive to you as a relevant segment. And then within a subset of that is where you create the demand by inspiring and influence the customers there. And then a subset of that itself is where you capture the demand and finally you retain the demand. Next slide. Marketing outcomes in the digital space are really the function of demand creation and demand capture. The KPIs and tools for each side of it are on the chart. I'm not going to call this out specifically, but what's important is that you really look at data to look at customer profiling and data to look at how you are able to convert and engage these customers. Let me talk about that in the next slide. The 5 components of data-driven marketing are strategy, obviously, which is basically strategy is nothing but the choices that you make, and therefore that's about where you want to play, who do you want to talk to, what do you really want to do. Once you have done that, there is media, there is creative, and there is loyalty, which are the 3 key pillars of digital marketing. Underlying that is data, and this is how it all comes together. How does it work differently? Let's go to the next slide. Digital marketing works differently because unlike traditional marketing, you've got a fine balance between content and data. And what does this enable you to do? Go to the next slide. Digital marketing allows us to move from a mass marketing approach to a very specific, targeted, personalized marketing. And therefore, we all know when the industrial revolution started in the previous century, basically what the whole premise was that instead of moving from personalization, we moved to mass manufacturing. And why did that happen? Because the economies of scale are far more significant in bringing in effectiveness and efficiency to the process than personalization. In some ways, we are coming a full circle because it's moving from mass targeting to now personalized targeting. How is digital able to do that? Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, before I go to how it is done, the targeting is basis 4 ways currently. Of course, there are breakups of this. Digital experts will be able to tell you how you can further break it up. But essentially, it's demographics based, it's behavior based, location based, and device based. It's self-explanatory. So we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about, which is that, digital marketing is able to pick up from social media, from your emails, is able to pick up a profile saying this is the audience I want, is able to aggregate them into a cohort, which is basically the cohort which is going to be relevant to your brand, and then to talk to them and more importantly, engage them on an ongoing basis. So you're really creating a community which is going to stand for you and which is going to be advocating your brand going forward. And that's the essential power of digital marketing. Next slide. Yeah, this I've already explained, which is that you're able to match cohorts and then build a lookalike audience or basically a group of cohorts which are going to be advocates for you. Next slide. Interestingly, digital also works brilliantly. The new paradigm works brilliantly because you can actually, drive this using programmatic media buying. Now, that's a lot of technology jargon. Simply put, what it means is that you can actually match supply and demand when it comes to marketing through search engines, through networks, through agencies, where you don't have to do anything. You are basically saying, this is my messaging, this is the target audience that I want to attract. Now the engine takes over and does the rest of it. Reverse auctions, bids, etc., whether it's payments, whether it is attracting the right kind of a campaign, all this is done programmatically. And that's going to be the next big thing, which is really that you don't need human intervention for some of these, and you're really competing on the technological space from that point of view. Next slide. Needless to say, this is something we understand because as consumers, we've seen this on the front end, on the other side of the screen, which is that it's all about delivering a smooth, frictionless, personalized user experience. It's no surprise that digital is in a way tracking what you're doing. So if you go onto the net and say, I want to look at shoes, it's no surprise that, the day after tomorrow, you start getting messages on your email or on your screen with the kind of shoes options that you have. And therefore, it gets more and more refined and customized, and this is going to be the way forward. But, in terms of the shift to digital marketing or the kind of digital paradigm that we're talking about, in my subsequent slides, I'll show you how this can now be taken to the absolute next level. Next slide. We can skip this slide because I've already talked about this. We'll go to the next one. So this is the section that I really want to talk about because, when you talk about the paradigm shift of digital marketing, I think we all know what's happened. The question is what's going to happen going forward. And that's very important because it's predicated on 3 big things. One is resurgence of content marketing. No more is it about a 15-second or a 30-second communication, and then you hope that the customer will find her way to the shop and then pick up your product. It's really about your content and becomes part of life. AI-driven content marketing strategies. This is, the less said the better because this is something that I think we are going to see real explosion in. And finally, an interesting one is what I came across as a model is employee activation. I think employees are going to become, basically influencers who are going to take your messaging forward in a significant way. Next slide. So what's the way ahead for digital marketing? Let's look at a few trends. Let's look at a peek into the future and see what it would mean. Next slide. Some of these slides have got a lot of content, so I'm not going to ask you to read it. Let me just call out the relevant points. 1, voice. I think we're going to see voice powered everything. So already we are seeing, devices at home, which are, like the Alexa or the Google Home, which are devices which work on commands from the voice. But I think it's going to go to the next level in terms of some of these trends, basically saying that we will do voice search for devices. We will have smart devices which are cheaper and which are going to be ingrained into your life so that you can actually use your voice to practically do almost everything, whether it is summoning a car, whether it is ordering food, whether it is switching off the lights, whether it is sending someone somewhere, everything can be voice controlled. That's going to be the next big thing that's going to happen. And therefore, Question for marketers and question from a digital point of view is already digital. How do you leverage this from a marketing perspective? I don't have the answers right now, but I think as potential marketers, this is something that we need to reflect on. And if you spend a few minutes, you'll realize the limitless potential of something like this. Next slide. AI-powered marketing, I've already talked about, and support technology. You're already beginning to see chatbots which are there on most search websites, banks, financial institutions, companies have already leveraged this in a significant way, optimizing efficiency. But what's going to become going forward interesting is basically that it's not just about optimizing manpower or resources. It's really about how you're going to make these chatbots personalized, more conversational. And therefore, how are you going to leverage creativity when it comes to AI to optimize campaigns? Imagine if you were looking for, let's say, a financial loan to build a house. You log on to the net, you log on to a company or companies, and you get a chatbot who's personalized for you, who basically understands you. You don't have to feed in your details of who you are, what your salary is, what are you looking for. The chatbot already knows you, knows your profile, and therefore straight away starts recommending things that what you need to do. Imagine what that would mean for marketers. So it's going to be, like I said, it's no more about mass media. It's about individually targeting a particular consumer, saying, I know you, and this is what I can do for you. Next slide. Social media. I think it's already pervasive. I think there isn't anyone, I was looking at some data which said in India, you already have 800 million plus users on social media in some form or the other. And that's staggering if you really want to think about it. It's part of our lives. It's integrated in a significant way. Again, going back to the sector that I come from, which is media and broadcast, we're already beginning to see areas where content is going to be user defined. It's going to be a situation where we're going to begin to see where users can actually dictate what kind of content outcomes they want to see. Science fiction and dynamic content changes are going to be the thing for the future. And therefore, for marketers, how do you leverage these paradigms to basically ensure that you're on top of social media is going to be critical. Next slide. Micro influencers, short form videos, micro influencers already have made headroads into our lives. This is something that again is going to explode in a significant way. It's no more about creative agencies. Creativity is not going to be the domain of one or two people. It's going to be everywhere. And how do you therefore leverage these micro influencers to be able to get your message across is what we need to look at. And for marketers, this is both a challenge as well as an opportunity. Next slide. Augmented reality becomes commonplace. Now, from a sports perspective, we're already beginning to see augmented reality really change the way we look at things. Those of you who saw the Pokemon Go craze of 2016, where the real world integrated with the digital world, and customers basically wanted to go and catch Pokemons in physical locations, became a rage. It died down also very fast, and it's interesting as a marketer to think about why it caught the fancy and equally fell out of favor so quickly. But it's not gone. It's going to come back, and that's where the new future is going to be. Next slide. Video is overtaking all other digital channels. I think one of the things that we keep talking about is that how quickly videos have taken over, text and over what you read. And this is again something that's not going to die down. In fact, the projections were at some point of time that 80% of all online content would become videos by 2020. It's exceeded all that, and therefore the future is going to be far more in terms of videos. What's debatable is the length of the videos. Is it going to be 1 minute? Is it going to be 30 seconds? Is it going to be 15 seconds? That's anybody's guess, but it's video all the way. Next slide. And of course, this one, which is an interesting one, which is organizations will start leveraging employees because they will realize that they are micro-influencers, they are your ambassadors, they are your advocates. And therefore, this is a trend which I think companies will begin harnessing, marketers will begin harnessing. And therefore, it goes back to human storytelling and how quickly you're able to spread your network and spread your stories. Next slide. And therefore, that brings me to the end of this, which is basically, I'd like to finish with a quote which says that, Maya Angelou, the civil rights activist, actually said that you basically forget what people said. You forget what people did, but you never forget how people made you feel. Now, at one level, this is a civil rights activist talking about human behavior. I believe that from a digital marketing paradigm, this is going to be the future, because it's not about what you as a marketer did or what you said. It's really about how you made the consumer feel. And I think when you start from that paradigm, saying that I'm going to give them an experience, I'm going to provide them an experience that will change not just their perception of the brand, but their lives, and get them to reinvent themselves as a better avatar of themselves, that's where digital marketers really can claim to be successful. And that hopefully is what I wanted to communicate in terms of, where digital marketing is coming from, how is it different, and what's going to be the future. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. Truly shifting to the online world is an unparalleled phenomenon, and slowly but steadily, the world has been adjusting. So we will now move on to the question answer round. We have received a few questions from the audience for you. The first one being, sir, how can management students keep up with the constant changes happening in the marketing industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think, in the old world, especially when I was studying, and some of us would have seen this, basically, read newspapers, read publications, etc., where the mandate. I think going forward, this whole thing is going to change to really how quickly you are able to embrace new technologies. Now, embracing new technology does not mean just reading, because you've got to experience it, especially from a digital point of view. And therefore, what I would encourage is essentially that how quickly you are able to, adopt this and use it just to test it out. The marketing world basically classifies consumers into various categories, saying some people are ahead on the innovation curve, they are quickly able to adapt to new technologies, some are laggards, some take time, and some don't do at all. I don't think that's an option anymore. I think it's really about how quickly you embrace change, leverage it, try it out, see what it works. It's not that you have to go on using it, but you've got to know how it works. And there is no option for that. And I believe that that's really, it's a digital version of getting your hands dirty, but that's the only way you can do this. And therefore, my question really to people in my team often is, when you're talking about a new technology, have you tried it for yourself? If you haven't, then go back, try it out, and then come back. That would be my simple answer.
Thank you, sir, for such a practical answer. So the next question that we have for you is, although the digital age has brought a revolution in marketing, it has also given rise to some ethical dilemmas. Can you shed some light upon that?
Yes. In fact, when I was thinking about this, that's something that I did think about putting in a slide, but it's good that it came up as a question. I think we all know the furor and the debate that's happening about data and privacy. I think the whole digital paradigm for marketers is not complete unless you are sensitive, you are aware about privacy laws, and very, very conscious of what consumers think on privacy. The aspect of data and privacy is not just a regulatory one. It's not just about governments. It's not about country regulations with regard to data and privacy. Various markets have different privacy laws, and therefore as marketers, you've got to be sensitive. You've got to be careful about what you're doing. But For marketeers, I think the whole point is that you've got to draw a fine line in terms of where and how you are going to be able to get this data out. So some countries, for example, mandate that you've got to take consent from the consumer in terms of accessing the data. Some do not allow you to do it at all, and some leave it open. So it's all about various stages of development. Now, I'm not going into how you're going to do, because marketers are adept at basically saying, okay, these are the laws of the land and this is how I'm going to pick up. I think what at this point of time, as these laws mature, as marketers, you need to be conscious of the fact that some of these are about being socially relevant. Gone are the days when consumers would overlook whether you are a responsible social citizen. Some of these things are very important for the consumers as much as product functionality or service functionality is. What you stand for, what values you live by is very, very important. And I think that would be a good starting point when it comes to marketers.
Thank you for your answer, sir. So the next question that we have for you is, where do you see the industry headed in the next 10 years with the onset of new technologies like Web 3.0 and Metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of said that that it's a tectonic shift, and it's something that we can sit here and I can put up 10 slides and talk about it. But I think the scale and magnitude of what's going to emerge is something that we can't even imagine. And some of the points that I talked about, AI, talked about voice-based, is just the beginning. The way things are changing is going to be huge. Let me give you an example from the world of media and broadcast. We are in the business of storytelling. We basically make shows, we make web series, we make television shows, and we put it out there. And the way we make money is basically by either attracting subscribers or getting advertisers to advertise on airtime. Last year, there was somebody who, in fact, in the Middle East, where I'm based, actually created a show, and before the first episode went on air, they recouped the entire money. What they did was basically they created characters and made non-fungible tokens out of it and distributed it. And so people who were watching it were not just watching it and consuming it for entertainment, but they were actually owners of the characters, or part owners, because they have non-fungible tokens. The NFT technology, basis blockchain and therefore immutability of ownership, is going to radically transform not just the media and entertainment world, but even marketing from a digital perspective. Tomorrow, you could create assets for your brand or for your company, and you could actually give away ownership for them. And therefore, in some sense, democratize the world of marketing, because you are no more talking to somebody, you are saying, come be part of my family. Just think about it, because I think that whole thing, words like metaverse, words like NFT are used randomly today, but it's only going to increase and it's only going to change the entire paradigm. This is something that I've personally been dabbling in the last 30 days. I've been thinking about it. I've worked on a few things. I would really encourage that as students, you don't have to be a believer in it, but understand the technology, because it has the power to change the way we think about things.
Thank you, sir, for such an insightful answer and giving so easily acceptable answers and examples.
Thank you so much, sir. We have another question from the audience. Somebody's asking that even after having all the data available, it is seen nowadays that companies are not able to customize their campaigns and tap into the user base that they intend to. So, sir, what do you think is the differentiating factor between a good and a bad digital marketing campaign?
That's an interesting question and a tough one also. You've got to look at context in some of these things, because it's very difficult to answer some of these across the board. Let me put it this way. First, before I jump into what's a good and what's a bad digital campaign, the digital penetration is changing depending on which market you go to. In the US, for example, the data that I was looking at yesterday shows that already brands and companies are investing more in digital than in traditional technologies. In India, that's yet to happen. It's still, brands are basically doing a mix, and therefore it's a certain percentage, but it's still linear, because to reach such a wide population and to look at it at the lowest possible cost, linear is not going away immediately. Traditional means are not going to go away immediately. Therefore, the digital one is still a much smaller component of what you spend. Having said that, I think, of all the things that I talked about, whether it is, the action, whether it is about conversion, I think a good digital campaign is about engagement. Why do I say that? Because, as somebody said, a marketing expert once said that the best form of marketing is when you don't really do marketing. The consumer should not feel that he or she is being marketed. They should actually experience and engage with the brand or the proposition or the service. And getting that right needs far more thinking than what a traditional marketer is doing. I think the way we are taught this, the way we adopt this entire field of digital marketing needs to also undergo change. Creating engagement scenarios is not as simple as it seems, and therefore I think that is if I had to use one criteria to say good versus bad, I would say how well it engages you, how well it makes you part of that brand, and say this is my life. I think that's going to be the litmus test.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful answers. Everybody in the audience, I'm sure, has understood the real importance of the shift of marketing to the digital paradigm. And sir, we have so many more questions, but I think we'll take just one last question. That is, what is the biggest challenge you have faced with the higher dependence on digital and online marketing during the pandemic?
Yeah, great question. I think, I think the biggest challenge has really been to understand the consumer. Like I said in my presentation, the one thing that hasn't changed, whether it's traditional or digital, is understanding of the consumer. I think when it comes to the pandemic period and post the pandemic period, I don't think any of us have really understood what consumers are going through. Let me give you an example from the world of media. We basically produce content. Like I said, we do shows, we put out stories there. On the one side, the pandemic has led to the fact that people can't go out and do things, right? The cinema theaters are shut down, you can't go on vacations, flights are not taking off, and therefore you are at home. And therefore the family unit comes together, right? The grandparents, the parents, the children are all together. And therefore the assumption is that they would want to see stories, want to see shows, or want to see films, which is family unit specific. That's an assumption that we thought, and that's what we went and tested the consumers. But what came out was that the screens are becoming smaller. The television in the house, in the living room, is not relevant. Everybody wants to watch it on their personal screens. So personalization, individualization within a family household is what's the new normal. And therefore, as a marketeer, if you go by the first assumption that, okay, now the whole family has come together, let's run Ramayana, Mahabharata, and let them show that, connect back to the roots. That's your natural, logical step. It doesn't work, because even while that's happening, people want their individual personalized consumption. And therefore, it goes back to the roots. It's got, actually, in a way, it's got nothing to do with traditional or digital. It's about how well you read the consumer. I think that's the single biggest challenge which marketers will face, especially in a post-pandemic period.
Certainly, sir. In fact, everything that you mentioned is actually a phenomenon we have witnessed. So it was wonderful to get a new perspective from a technical viewpoint from you. So thank you so much once again, sir, for answering all the questions so patiently. And with this, we have now come to an end of the first schedule of day 1 of the Shastri Indo-Canadian virtual lecture series. We'll start with the second schedule in a short while. Thank you, sir.